Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil Parrott.
Hey Phil, always glad to have you. So, let's see here. What's in the news today? There is a little dominating story about a film from our distinguished competition, Batman v Superman. Many of you have probably already listened to the review that Phil and Lilith and I and Tyler and
Chris,
thank you, and Chris gave of the film. I don't want to say it was that harsh. I think we did find the joy in it, and certainly Tyler absolutely found the joy in the film. It's for me, it's interesting. The further I get away from the film, the less I like it, the less forgiving I am of its faults. That's not my Batman. That's not my Superman. Here's my thing, Phil. When I was a young man, as a Marvel fan, growing up in the 80s, all we had was Lou Ferrigno. All we had was Reb Brown and later Matt Salinger. And so I was very forgiving of Marvel films because, yes, they weren't good films. They weren't true to the characters per se, but they tried to capture something that I loved of the characters. They tried to bring about what made that character good to the screen, even if they completely ignored and ran away from the source material. And I liked it because that's all we got. That's all we had. All we had was the Reb Browns, the Matt Salingers, the Lou Ferrignos, I'm forgetting the name of the actor who played Thor in that world and Daredevil. They were great characters. They were great takes on the characters. John Rhys-Davies will always be Kingpin to me. These are good. These were good films to us, and of course at this time you have to remember the backdrop of this is that you already had the classic Christopher Reeve Superman, you had Tim Burton's Batman, so we knew that DC was just better at all of this than Marvel was at the time. We didn't mind so much because we were getting something from Marvel. We just wish that Marvel could be as good as DC. Now, it seems like a lot of DC fans really like this Batman v Superman. Not all of them. There are more than a few hardcore DC fans I know who are looking at this film with disgust. But I do get why some DC well, I want to say I get it because, hey, I sat there and I defended Reb Brown. I defended Matt Salinger. I know why you want to defend, but then a part of me said, but one of the reasons I defended them was because that's all we got. It's not like DC doesn't have a lot of properties out there right now, between the Flash Arrowverse, between the Gothamverse, between the Supergirl verse, there are real great DC properties out there doing DC. The way they should be, or the way maybe a lot of people feel they should be, that you don't have to settle for Batman v Superman. And I do feel that people are settling for Batman v Superman. And like I said, it's not to say it's not a efficient workman-like film, Hudson Hawk is an efficient workman-like film. It's not necessarily a good film. These are, and I've said it is not as bad as Fantastic Four. It is not as bad as Amazing Spider-Man 2. There are bad films and then there are just awful films. And this is not an awful film. But I do feel like there is this defensiveness about it that implies a dearth of DC properties to be happy about. when there's not. And I guess maybe it's just this feeling of a comparative dearth because there is so much Marvel property out there with 3 studios that have produced Marvel properties that you feel like there's less DC. I mean, when you look at the movie calendar, you'll see 6 Marvel films to every DC that's scheduled to come out. And I do get how that can be disappointing, but at the same time, you got to call a shelter half an entrenching tool. And when this film is bad, it is very bad. When the film is good, it is passable, but when it is bad, it is very bad. And I don't understand the defense of it. Because it's not like I'm sitting here defending, any of the X-Men films. I will happily rip on Amazing Spider-Man, and I'll even say that, some of the Marvel films haven't been as good as others. Mm-hmm. I was not the biggest fan of Iron Man 2, although I enjoyed Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2, I think, is kind of one of those Marvel films. I was not a fan of Iron Man 3. I kind of thought Iron Man 3 was all over the place. Its real redeeming quality was, to me, actually the Mandarin, which a lot of people disliked. I felt that the Mandarin reveal was just so spot on and fun for it that it really just made me happy when you had that reveal, because it was so not what you expected.
I mean, no, none of them were bad, but I kind of enjoyed Iron Man 2 a little more than Iron Man 3.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I was never that big of a fan of Iron Man except for Iron Man 1. I mean, after Iron Man 1, I kind of felt that it was always getting a little bloated, mm-hmm. and it was always getting a little. You could see that was sort of where Marvel felt their tentpole was. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of, I think that Robert Downey Jr. and his Tony Stark did something great for Marvel. I don't think they need to rely on Robert Downey Jr. as much as they think they do. Which is, of course, one of the things that I think that I do want to talk about, which is taking the wrong lessons from success. And I really, really feel like DC is taking all the wrong lessons from success, because they have had this film that is successful. By all means, this although we'll see how it does next weekend, but it's not like it has a lot of competition, Mm-hmm. They did have to revise down what their take was. It was like $4 million less than they thought they were going to get. So it did already underperform a little, and I think it is probably going to continue to underperform. Although maybe it won't. Maybe there's going to be enough fan praise for it that people are going to go back and see it. Maybe, I don't know. But I think the wrong lesson to take from it was that it was what people wanted, or that you can fix things. Because it's one of the big stories right now is that they have after both based on the dour reviews of this film of Batman v Superman, even though it's been profitable, it has had bad reviews. That based on that, and based on how well received the Bohemian Rhapsody trailer for Suicide Squad was, they've decided to go and reshoot a bunch of Suicide Squad to lighten its mood. And at this stage in the game, when you want to completely change the tone of your film to make, in any direction, either to make it darker or to make it lighter or to make it, bluer, that's bad. That's bad, because it's saying that you don't respect your material.
But do you think maybe they're a little panicked? Maybe they're not completely changing direction, but they're adding more humor, because one of the big complaints of Batman v Superman was just like, oh, so dark, it was so dark.
Yeah, but the thing is that here's what I'm going to say. The problem with Batman v Superman wasn't its darkness. It wasn't, and anyone, you can look at that and say, oh, it was too dark, and that's why the critics didn't like it. But no critic is actually even complaining about the darkness. They're complaining about its pacing. They're complaining about how long it takes to get to the action. They're complaining about the completely unnecessary stuffing of characters into the story. They're complaining about Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor, he is his own thing.
He was more Jim Carrey Riddler than Gene Hackman.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. He was his own thing. I actually didn't mind Lex. I didn't mind Twitchy Lex that much because I did get the idea of kind of a mad genius vibe to him. I kind of got with that, and then with the whole dark side thing, I'm thinking, oh, it's all Mother Box or Brainiac influence. So I kind of felt like there was a lot of from just being evil genius to being infected with alien technology. I thought that it's all explainable in its own way, and I didn't think that Jesse Eisenberg portrayed it poorly. I think where the film kind of veers off course, there's a lot of places it veers off course, but I think the biggest problems with this film is an inconsistency of story. That we don't really get why everybody is approaching the story in the way that they are, which was, again, in many ways, I think, kind of the Amazing Spider-Man's problems when people say was that it, rather than being a story about Peter Parker who has superpowers, it was a self-conscious idea of a story about a superhero. And I think these are very much stories about superheroes trying to get to their fight, rather than being about Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince.
Oh, we barely got any Clark Kent in this movie.
No, and of course that was something I was thinking about. And I take the flack for it as to why Superman 3 is my favorite Superman film. And the reason Superman 3 is my favorite Superman film is because Superman 3 is the most Clark Kent-centric of the Superman franchise. It's the one where who Clark Kent is and what it means to be Clark Kent is important to the story. And I've ragged on this idea a lot of times about how the idea that Clark Kent is the secret identity and Superman is his real self. But I was thinking about that maybe I've been too hard on this theory, even though I actually see it, because basically I dislike that theory because people portray it as Superman is really the ultimate Ubermensch, the Randian ideal, and that Clark Kent is who he pretends to be. But then I thought about this for a moment, and it's an interesting question when you get into questions of secret identities. Is Batman Bruce Wayne, or is Bruce Wayne Batman's secret identity? Is the true person that is the true person really Batman or Bruce Wayne? And if you put that on Clark Kent, is the real person the person he was born as, Kal-El, Superman, or is the person who he truly is the costume he affects, the identity he chooses? And he says, I choose to be Clark Kent. And in being Clark Kent, in being a mild-mannered man from Smallville who believes in goodness and right and decency, is in choosing to be that who I truly am, because it is who I've chosen to be, rather than just, the quirk of birth of who I am. In Batman chooses to be the Bat. He was born billionaire Bruce Wayne. He had no choice in that. But in becoming the Batman, he makes a choice to have a reflection of who he truly is, to be the Bat in the night. The Dark Knight, if you will. And Superman, in choosing to be Clark Kent, makes that choice to be the good human being, to be good, to be decent, to be honest. Not because he has to, but because he has chosen to be that. Yes.
Did you ever see the second Kill Bill movie?
I've actually seen neither of the Kill Bill movies.
Okay. If you ever have the time and you could find it, at least at the end of the second movie, David Carradine gives Uma Thurman this big speech about secret identities and stuff. But he uses the example of Superman, and he says Clark Kent is Superman's view of humanity. Weaker, the bumbling,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, yeah, I know that's this idea that people have, and I've always rejected it because I don't see that. But I think if you see it as Superman sees Clark Kent as the ideal, that Clark Kent is who he wants to be. He wants to be, there's this great short story, you can listen to it on This American Life, I'm sure it was written down somewhere first, but it's about the guy who dated Lois Lane after she broke up with Superman. And it's, just this regular guy. And, it's all about him dealing with being the guy who dates her after Superman. And then she sort of gets this. She gets in this gig as Superman's sidekick and all this stuff. And then, of course, eventually she winds up back with Superman. And he's sitting in a bar and he's just kind of sad. And then all of a sudden Clark Kent comes in and him and Clark Kent just start talking. And it's like about how great it is to talk to this guy, Clark Kent, who he barely knows, but he's just such a warm and decent human being. And they rag on Superman about, what a fraud he is. And they have a great laugh. And it's just like, there is a truth to that idea that, in choosing to be Clark Kent, Superman chooses to be human because he sees that is his aspiration. Where Bruce Wayne aspires to be, the nightmare that haunts criminal, crime alley. Superman aspires to be a decent human being because at the end of the day, that's so much more important to the world that there be decent human beings than that there be Superman. Mm-hmm. Now, another interesting fan theory that's out there right now, which I just read today that I thought was very fascinating, is that if you think about Batman as the continuation of Tim Burton's Batman, if you think about the idea that Tim Burton's Batman, and if you look at the first, the original Batman film, Batman kills, Batman does use guns, that Batman does do a lot of the things that people are criticizing this Batman for. And if you think about it, and they actually made this very interesting idea that, if Batman kills the Joker, that maybe there's more than one Joker. And they actually use this thing that when he calls out people dressed as clowns, he doesn't say a person dressed as a clown. He says people dressed as clowns, suggesting that there may have been more than one. They also point out that this might be why Jared Leto as the Joker has the self-referential tattoos, because he's modeled himself after the Joker. Perhaps even as in some stories, maybe this is Jason Todd has become the Joker. There's all sorts of interesting theories. But the idea, and the timeline works out right because he says he's been Batman for 30 years. And, which would put it sometime in the mid to late 80s that he became Batman. So it's an interesting idea. And, one of the things that and again, this is where I think they leave a lot unsaid in this film that kind of would have helped the story. Like if they didn't try to jam so much into it, if the story had been how not Batman v Superman, but how Superman saves Batman, which you sort of get at the end here. At the end of this, you sort of see how Batman has come to realize, although they don't speak it well, because they kind of just speak it as more, well, we have to get ready for the coming war, But the idea is that because Superman is the hero, and if you think about Batman's story as this arc, as Batman is this guy who comes to be a hero, but then through the long slog of being Batman for 30 freaking years, the death of at least one Robin, in Zack Snyder's view, it sounds like all Robins are dead. That there was one Robin, he's dead, so we're not going to get a Nightwing, which is sad and wrong. But, hopefully Zack Snyder doesn't have too much influence on the ongoing DC universe.
Yeah, give us Nightwing.
Yeah, we want Nightwing because Nightwing informs Batman very well. The idea that one of these kids came out of this, was able to be his own hero, and not, be a pathetic waste is actually a good thing.
He's the idealized Batman. He's Batman without the mental baggage.
Exactly. And so we do want to have a Nightwing eventually. And we would like to see that there may have been more Robins. I was actually kind of sad that little girl that we see at the beginning of when I first saw that little girl, when he goes to after the Battle of Metropolis, she says, "My mom's up there," and it's like, all horrible and scary. And I so wanted her to be the Robin in the from the Dark Knight Rises, because that's the female Robin. She's got red hair, like this girl has red hair.
Oh, Carrie Kelly, yeah.
Carrie, I was she has to be Carrie Kelly. And maybe when we get that Batman film eventually, maybe she is Carrie Kelly. Maybe he's been training her. Although, who knows? Who knows exactly what they're going to do with that? I don't know. Like I said, they killed Jimmy Olsen in the first scene. And apparently Superman doesn't give a crap about Jimmy Olsen. Lois, he's going to save. Jimmy Olsen, he had it coming. I don't know.
Yeah, but in this universe, we don't... Well, I mean, he should save everyone, but, I mean, we don't even know if he even knew Jimmy Olsen.
Don't get me started. To me, that's like the worst part about this whole thing, is that it is an incompetent Superman and an incompetent Batman who can't get out of their own dang ways. It's like, and that's why I'm saying this story could have been great if it had been. So let's say we don't. So if we want to do a Batman v Superman film, but the story is Batman versus Superman, but Superman reaches out to Batman, this aging, angry Batman, and makes him reconnect with heroism. And whether Superman lives or dies at the end, that's fine. But the idea is that at the end, Batman realizes Batman can be more than just a monster. I don't have to be the boogeyman villain sphere. I can actually be the hero people aspire to. And I kind of feel that's sort of what they kind of maybe wanted to do, but they didn't know how to tell that story because they had to tell so many other things. And they had to really drag down Batman.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of this was based on The Dark Knight Returns, which was a very dark, violent Frank Miller story.
Was it really though? Was it really based on that, or did they just, here's the thing. And here's the thing, and when you say, it's based on, no, it's not, because Dark Knight Returns is based on a lifetime story of Batman and Superman.
True.
And that's the thing. It's not like Batman just meets Superman one day and Batman decides to kill him. It's because over the years, and this is something, Frank Miller has said about it, which is that Frank Miller's view was that Batman and Superman shouldn't be friends because they work on opposite sides of the law. Obviously, the counter argument is no, they are friends because even though they are so different, they have a common heroism at their core. And that's what they bond over. But of course, Frank Miller decided that Superman was going to be, a patsy for Ronald Reagan and do this whole thing. It's all one and fun, it's all what he wanted to do, and that's fine. And that's his story. And it's, hey, for the 80s, that's where we were, man. That was V for Vendetta. That was The Dark Knight. That was that whole shtick. And it was nice of them to catch up with Marvel, who did that in the 70s with Richard Nixon and the Serpent Society. But DC is always playing catch up. We know that. It's just where we're at. But it's not based on Dark Knight. It's got elements that they've aped from it. They've got a few of the guitar riffs from Dark Knight.
Visually, some of it is. Yeah,
but story wise, it has nothing in common with Dark Knight except for the fact that Batman is a violent sociopath, and that's it. Because it's not even the Superman from Dark Knight. Because it's not like this is the Superman who's like, anything like that Dark Knight. It's not like that Superman. It's not like he is being played for a patsy or he's being manipulated. Obviously they're both being manipulated by Luthor, but even that is, it's too many things in a film that didn't need to be that. Like I said, you could have done a much better story. As great as having Gal Gadot in here is, she does lift right out, because they gave her so little to do that you could really remove her from the story and you just tell a good Batman redemption story. And that's what I think at the core of this, that's what this film is supposed to be, is Batman rediscovering what it means to be a hero, inspired by this annoying alien who he wants to hate. And this is one of these things that, like, Batman is mad at Superman because Superman fought Zod, which wound up causing a lot of damage in Metropolis. Okay, understandable that he's mad at Kryptonians for doing that, but not being able to differentiate Zod from Superman is like not being able to differentiate the Joker from Batman, you know? And, you know, maybe arguably that, hey, you know, Superman's having that problem. He can't differentiate the Joker from Batman. Well, you know, and in that case, you know, that's a good, interesting jumping off point. That's your classic superhero misunderstanding before the team up. But that comes much earlier in the story, you know. You know, we get this superhero misunderstanding like 2/3 of the way in the film, and then it's like, oh, now we're going to team up to fight Doomsday because sure, let's stick him in here.
Yeah, and then they like try to cram in the death of Superman storyline at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and they don't even commit to it. You know, that's the thing about the death of Superman thing is they couldn't even let it be at the end of it, so that they got to give you that, oh no, he's not really dead.
Well, they had a lot of elements like, you know, that from the original storyline that lasted like a year, but it was just like, you know, you had Supergirl in there trying to take Superman's place, and then you had the 4 replacement Supermen, you know, like Superboy and Steel, and you didn't have any of that, so it's like, well, okay, well, Superman's dead, now what do you do?
Maybe you do Supergirl. Maybe you do something else so that this actual legacy actually has value, you know, so that maybe there is this urge to grow beyond that, you know. I mean, you know, when you had Man of Steel and Supergirl was supposed to be a part of that, you know, maybe that is her inspiration to come out and be Supergirl, because or even call herself Superwoman, you know, because, you know, she's been in hiding with all these other metahumans because no one's quite sure what to do. But then seeing her cousin sacrifice himself to save the world, that's what inspires her to be Supergirl. And then you have her in the Justice League movie, and you can still bring back Cavill as Superman. I mean, because he can come back. He is Superman. He is, you know, he is more than a man, and that's something that you could explore any number of ways, you know. But rather than let a film be a film, they crammed too much in and they hedged all their bets. And if you hedge your bets too much, you don't win. You know, that's the idea of a hedged bet is you hedge your bet so that if something goes wrong, you've got something else that'll at least get you something. And that's fine. But if you hedge yourself too much, if you hedge against every opportunity, everything wins and everything loses. And you wind up with, you know, stasis. And I think that's where they're at. They're like at this spot where, okay, we've set up all these things and we don't know what we're going to do with it. And it's like, you know, they had so much potential, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, everyone can say, "Oh, it made $200 million." Like, okay, great, it made $200 million. Imagine where it would be right now if this was a good movie. You know, just imagine that. Just imagine if this film was as good as, say, Iron Man, was as good as Winter Soldier.
We'd be closing in on $1 billion.
Yeah, in 1 week.
Yeah.
You know, there would be no question about where DC was with their universe. But instead, they hedged their bets. And like I said, I don't blame Zack Snyder for this at all. I mean, partially, sure. As much as I blame the caterer or the, you know, producers or anybody else. You know, like I said, a lot of people worked real hard to make a film to make you mad.
I was going to say, is that the problem? Too many cooks in the kitchen?
Maybe, yeah, you know, or maybe just not enough of a good cook.
Too many corporate hands.
You see, I don't even think it's corporate. You know, because it's not like saying, oh, DC, you know, Marvel doesn't have corporate interference. Yeah, Marvel's all corporate interference. Just ask Joss Whedon. You know, he's trying to tell a story, and they're saying, yeah, you got to do this. Let's put in that, and yeah, he gets mad about it and he fights. But then he also pushed back. He says, you're going to make me do this. Here's what I got to do. And that's why, for all the complaints, because Age of Ultron gets its complaints, and it gets, it's overstuffed. I don't think anyone is saying Age of Ultron is as bad as Batman vs. Superman. You know, That's the thing. I think anyone who liked Age of Ultron on a surface level likes Batman v Superman on a surface level. People that want to rip on Batman v Superman, they're not going to rip on Ultron as much because Ultron's bloated. Ultron has a lot of things going on, but at the end of the day, Joss Whedon pushed back and he made sure he had a story that had an emotional core.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're missing in Batman v Superman is your emotional core. And now we get with this urge to make Suicide Squad lighter, which, hey, granted, sure, fine, make it lighter. But if that wasn't the emotional core of the story, if that's not who these characters are, based on the fact that you had jokes in a trailer that everyone liked, you're gonna kill this. Because this is let's call a shelter half an entrenching tool. This is Diablo, Killer Croc, Deadshot, Harley Quinn. These are not light, funny characters. These are sociopathic murderers. And they can laugh while they're doing it if you're Harley Quinn, you know. But if you try to make them into Jim Carrey's Riddler, where it's all a gag, although here I'll say Jim Carrey's Riddler was actually, to me, always very scary. I always felt that Jim Carrey handled the scariness of the Riddler very well. You know, that Jim Carrey understood that, yeah, I can be laughing, but you know what? I'm laughing because I just don't care. I just don't care. And if you're dead in 5 seconds, I am not going to bat an eye. You know, because I'm the Riddler and I'm smarter than everybody's. And that's great. And I think, you know, you get a nice bit of that with Edward Nygma too, you know, where I get the feeling I think you play that nicely, although a little more quietly, you know, in Edward Nygma on Gotham, you know. Which, and again, like I said, that's the thing is that DC has these great stories that they're telling, but for whatever reason, you know, they've decided that that's not going to be their universe, that the movie universe is different. And in the movie universe, everyone is sad and dour and can't shave. You know?
Do you think the whole problem with, well, I mean, I think the big problem is, you know, the TV and the movies aren't one universe like Marvel, but, I mean, do you think the big problem with Batman v Superman was just they want to be different from Marvel and be darker and more serious, but meanwhile they're also trying to catch up to Marvel to try to build something like Marvel has?
Well, you know what it is that, you know what it is? Because here's the thing. It's not like Marvel hasn't been dark and serious. I mean, you really want, you know, you're going to tell me that Winter Soldier is a lighthearted romp, you know? And, you know, Civil War, that's going to be darker. And that's going to be kind of dour and sad. But it's going to be sad because it's friends fighting friends. You know, it's going to be sad for a reason. When Marvel gets sad, and they can be sad, and they can be dark, and they can be frightening. But it's for a reason. It's for an emotional core that's where the story went, you know? Coming into Batman 30 years in, where we don't even get to really see much of Batman or get much of Batman's motivation, it's an empty slate. It's very blank, and we don't really, you know. Here's what I'll say. You know, for many people, the quintessential Batman, especially the old Batman, is the Batman Beyond Batman. You know, where you have old Bruce Wayne in his thing, and he pulls the gun in that first episode of Batman Beyond, and he is horrified by what he's been driven to because he's out of options. He's too old for this stuff, and he realizes what he's becoming, and that's our old Batman, the Batman who is horrified by what he's become, not the Batman who's just mad and angry and happy to be the monster that everybody that's what Gotham needs is a monster, you know. That's not who people are expecting for Batman. They want a Dark Knight, Knight. They want a guy who has this core of nobility, and they didn't give us that, you know. Batman has to have some kind of reason behind psychotic vengeance. He has to have some motivation, and he at least has to be a good detective. You know,
That I hopefully they do more of that in the solo Batman movie. They make him more of a detective, and
they're not doing a solo Batman movie.
I thought they were with. I thought they were with Affleck. I thought.
No, I mean it's not on any schedule.
Oh, I don't know if they scheduled it, but I thought there was even rumors that he might be writing it with Jeff Johns.
No. Ben Affleck wrote a Batman film. Ben Affleck would really much like to have his Batman film made.
I thought they confirmed that they were doing it. I don't know.
No. All they've confirmed is that Ben Affleck wrote a Batman film that he likes.
Okay.
Yeah, which is kind of like me saying I wrote a Batman film that I liked. Not for nothing. It's like, yeah, I've got Batman ideas. I could write a Batman film that I think is the bee's knees. But no, there's not. And here's the thing: there's not going to be a Batman film. There's probably not going to be another Superman film.
Oh, I'm pretty sure there's not going to be another Superman film.
No, I'll be honest with you. The one advantage of this film with the Flash going back in time in that scene is that, well, I guess now we can reboot everything, can't we?
Maybe.
And that's the thing. It's like, trying to recreate Marvel in one movie is foolish. It is foolish because Marvel didn't create Marvel in one movie. Marvel actually took three movies, one of which they kind of had, two of which they've pretty much written out of canon, when you think about it, because neither of the two Incredible Hulk movies that were supposed to be the Marvel basis are really part of the Marvel basis. I mean, yes, parts of Incredible Hulk are part of the Marvel canon, although it's a completely different banner now, but we don't really reference it. We don't reference Betty much. We don't reference this Thunderbolt's coming back, but it's and they did mention Blonsky and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., although no one's mentioned Leader yet. It's that these things do exist in. But Marvel knew when, that it doesn't always work out just fine the first time. And sometimes you got to go back and sometimes you got to change some things. And sometimes you got to say, okay, that wasn't really, what you thought you saw there wasn't really that. And so we're going to do something else now. It's a lot of hard work and trial and error. And just to say, well, we'll just make it all be now. I mean, really, they should. What they should have done is they should have actually just did a Batman film.
Yeah, but everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, they just did that a few years ago."
But if it's good, no one's gonna care.
Well, I don't know. I'm guessing maybe Batman's going to show up in all the DC movies, probably, because I think I think he shows up for 2 seconds in Suicide Squad. I don't know if it's like a flashback to show how Harley and the Joker got imprisoned, because I think it's them tearing through the streets and Batman lands on their car and
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really have no idea how they're going to work that, and now they're reshooting it, so who knows? Who knows whatever the original story was supposed to be that with what we're going to get now?
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing of it is like, we don't know. We don't know what we're going to get now because DC is so panicked about what their next film is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact of the matter is that, these people aren't fools. They know that every reviewer hating on it isn't just Schadenfreude,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the thing of it is like, it's not all Schadenfreude, because Marvel always gets Schadenfreude. There's always, a nice number of reviews saying why this is the worst Marvel film ever made. There's always a number of Pixar films. This is when these are the chinks in Pixar's armor. And invariably every film that's a sequel this is the one that's not good anymore. And they all make $1 billion. And everyone, when the dust settles, says, this was actually pretty good. It wasn't their best film, no, but this wasn't bad. This wasn't, this wasn't Fantastic Four,
This wasn't Green Lantern.
Yeah. The bar, as they say, it's winning a limbo contest. The bar is really low. Heck, I haven't seen all of Green Lantern yet, but I'm still going to say it was probably better than Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four was so bad. And at least Green Lantern had Deadpool in it. So, At least, at least you've got that. At least he's a nice person to look at. And it had an Amanda Waller character, and Amanda Waller is always fun, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in her 16 different versions that they've done throughout the different DC universes now. Which is why I love Amanda Waller, because she is such a great tie to the, you know, she is the DC Nick Fury. And to have the DC Nick Fury be a fat black lady or an older black lady, because she's not fat anymore. But I liked when she was a big lady, because that was, to me, that was cool. Just that she should be this big lady, kind of like the Kingpin, you know. It has its own level of intimidation, you know. That when you make her, especially when they made her like, you know, 16 and hot for some reason in some rebooted universe, you know, that didn't make any sense, you know, where, you know, she's got like 62 D cup breasts and somehow forgets to button her top 6 buttons. I was like, Amanda Waller, what? Although someone made a great joke about it, which is, no, you got to understand, this is like young Amanda Waller. This is when she's first starting out, and you got to understand all those late nights and pizza, hamburger dinners. You know, that's all going to take its toll. Just give it time. So you know how much you can age Amanda Waller in the comic books. But you know, I think now they've settled on an Amanda Waller somewhere in the middle, which is fine. You know, she doesn't have to be obese. She can just be, you know, a middle-aged black lady who takes no guff, and that's a good thing. Amanda Waller is, you know, again, DC has really good characters of diversity that they just don't use. And why, I don't know. You know, it's like, you know, it's like when I was making the whole thing about, you know, why is DC pushing, I mean, I get why DC is pushing Cyborg, because Cyborg is popular. Thank you, Teen Titans, you know. Thank you, the guy who does the voice of Cyborg on Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go. That's why he's a star, because that actor has made that character someone that really speaks to the population.
Oh, that guy's getting so much work. He was the voice of Cyborg in Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go, but they have like those Lego Justice League movies now. He's the voice of Cyborg in those too.
He's the only voice of Cyborg. You know, he is Cyborg. He is like they did the Optimus Prime movie. Honestly, that they didn't cast, because he's an African American gentleman. They did not cast him as Vic Stone in the movie. I think is going to hurt them. Just like not having the Flash from the TV show be the Flash in the movies is going to hurt that movie. Mark my words, that movie, because it's not who people have come to love for these characters.
Oh yeah, I already have a chip on my shoulder about that Flash because it's not Grant Gustin.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the thing, is like, he's a good Flash, and I don't know if this other Flash guy is good or not, you know, but I know that he's not who people are looking for the Flash, you know, and that's the thing is, you know, that's the thing with this whole movie is these aren't the versions of the characters. These are versions of the characters. These are ways you can tell these character stories, but they're so separate from what people want for these characters or what people expect from these characters that you at least have to give them a strong enough reason to understand what happened. Like I say, this is 30-year-old Batman. Sorry, this is 50-year-old Batman. This is Batman 30 years on. You got to explain that to people so they know this is everything Batman went through. You know, not for nothing, you could have maybe skipped the death of the Wayne parents and maybe gotten into the death of Robin.
Yes.
Maybe exactly. In that, seeing the breaking point of Batman, maybe that's the death that you want to tell, because that's the one that turns the corner, rather than hinging everything on the fact that both their mothers had the same first name.
Yeah, because I think the death of Robin would have like spoke more to the character of, you know, of Batman.
They're trying to tell here, because this is the character that they're trying to tell here. This is the Batman who has been broken by his war on crime.
Yeah, because that was even another theme in the Dark Knight Returns. Originally, it was like him, you know, thinking about the death of Jason Todd, which interestingly enough was like 2 years before they actually did kill him in the comics.
Yeah, well, people have been wanting to kill Jason Todd for a while.
Oh yeah.
You know, pretty much since issue 1, you know, it's like, can we kill this character? No. But that's the thing, is like focusing on that.
Yeah.
You would have communicated this story so much better. Because, that's why this Batman is that Batman.
Yeah, because I was listening to some I think it was Kevin Smith today, and he was saying, he's like, do we really need the Wayne murders again? It's like, everyone, it's just like, the story of Jesus Christ. Everyone knows it. You don't have to retell it.
Yeah, or even just, here's the thing. Adam West's 1966 Batman has the death of the Waynes in it, just not an active showing of the death of the Waynes.
Because doesn't he mention it in like the first episode or something? And that's it. They never mention it again.
Yeah, he says, since the death of my parents, by the hands of a cowardly criminal, I've dedicated my life to justice, There you go. That's the Batman. That's the Batman origin. And people have said that about Man of Steel, that they didn't need to do 4 hours on Krypton. You could start in Smallville, Kansas, because really everything that happens on Krypton isn't that important to Superman. What's important to Superman is Smallville. And really what's important to Superman is even just him showing up that first day in Metropolis. Because when you think about it, that first Superman story, I don't think even does much with the origin of Superman. I've never read it, but I don't think they do a lot of the Superman origin in his first comic. I think they kind of start him off as Superman in 1930s America,
Well, yeah, you're talking about Action Comics number 1.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's just him in Metropolis. Yeah, like, I don't know if that was the first one where he like stops a guy from beating his wife, and it's all Metropolis.
Yeah, and that's the inspiration of this character. All that stuff comes in later, and all that stuff is important, but it's not,
it's not everything.
Yeah, and the thing is that sometimes it's more interesting when I always liked Smallville, and one of the great things about Smallville is that there is this ongoing reveal of Krypton. That when you open it, Superman's as clueless about Krypton as anybody. He's Clark Kent. He's this young kid growing up, dealing with his special powers, and learning that with great power comes great responsibility. And that he has this Kryptonian heritage, it's great for him, but it's something that he's learning about as you as the audience is learning about it. And as I always say about Superman and Krypton is that, Superman only knows about Krypton what was written down by Kryptonians. He's only getting the nice glossy version of Kryptonian history. He's not getting whatever the dark underbelly of Kryptonian society might have been. And I imagine there was probably a lot of dark underbellies of Kryptonian society, given that nearly everybody we ever see from Krypton is a supervillain. And of course, part of that was just the fact that they somehow decided that the main group of people to survive Krypton were all going to be the villains who were lucky enough to be in the Phantom Zone. So it's like, poor planning on the Kryptonians' part. And then, of course, like when Krypton's just being destroyed, why does no one think to go to the Phantom Zone? We have this place we can go to get off world, so at least we'll survive. Yes, we'll be in with all the criminals, but you know what? There's a lot more Kryptonians than criminals. I don't know. Is there any Marvel news out there?
One quick thing I was going to bring up was, did you see today? Do you know what May 10th is going to be?
May 10th.
Yes.
Is that for? That's not for Comic Book Day, is it?
No, that's the weekend before. No, they said today. I guess that's when Deadpool's coming out on Blu-ray.
Oh, Deadpool on Blu-ray. Well, I already saw that movie, and I don't have a Blu-ray player. So, good for Deadpool. I'm sure it's going to do well. Deadpool, great film. Really, I think here's what I'll say. I'll say Deadpool was probably, with maybe the exception of the first Spider-Man, was maybe the best non-Marvel production Marvel movie. I think that, Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man was really good. I think the first X-Men was pretty good too, although I think that one had a bit of a convoluted plot in like what I don't like when like science is sort of because'd, it's like we have this thing that'll turn you into a mutant because, and it won't even turn you into a good mutant. It's going to turn you into a fish mutant that turns into water and dies. It's like it was such a weird plot that I wasn't like, I didn't quite get where that was going. So that's why the first X-Men kind of falls for me. I don't think you get honestly, I've always been a little weak on most of I actually kind of liked the Wolverine Origins film just because it had a blob, and and it had Deadpool, and it had kind of a neat conceit with those characters. I actually kind of liked Wolverine Origins. But the first X-Men movie I thought had a lot going for it. I thought that its final MacGuffin of a villainous plot was kind of weak, but aside from that, it was pretty good. And again, this again, I'm going to tell you this is the difference between what we just saw with Batman v Superman and the Marvel movie. Marvel movies can have a ridiculous MacGuffin of a plot, but if you have good, interesting, well-developed characters, you can say, well, it was good. That plot was ridiculous, but everything else was pretty good. And I kind of think that's sort of what you got with Watchmen in many ways, at least definitely with the book. Because, of course, the plot in Watchmen is just ridiculous. But, what's his name? The writer of the book.
Watchmen?
Yeah.
Alan Moore.
Alan Moore wrote really good characters. So the ridiculousness of the plot is just the MacGuffin. It's the thing that we're doing to have a story in which our characters exist. That's why it's called a MacGuffin, because really the MacGuffin is meaningless. It doesn't matter that Indiana Jones is seeking the Ark of the Covenant. It doesn't matter what's going on. That's really secondary. It doesn't matter that Luke Skywalker is going to blow up the Death Star, or that the Death Star even exists. That's just the MacGuffin that gets us to a hero's journey where we're going to have characters grow and learn about themselves and have a good story. And in this one, in Batman v Superman, you have a ridiculous MacGuffin of a plot, plus you don't have proper story and character development given. You're seeing everybody kind of springing fully formed from the head of Zeus without, the term Athena fully formed from the head of Zeus derives from this idea that, Athena sprung forward from Zeus's forehead. But there's actually a very interesting backstory about how it's prophesied that Athena will one day rise up and destroy Zeus, that she will be the greatest of the gods. And so he devours her, much in the way that his father devoured all of his siblings. But she continues to grow inside of him and grows inside his brain and then bursts forth from his brain when he has a horrible headache one day. He survives, but Athena lives, and that's the story of Athena. So saying spring fully formed from the head of Zeus means someone just coming out of nowhere. But there is a backstory behind them. But if you don't know that backstory, it is kind of ridiculous that Athena springs fully formed from the head of Zeus. And that's what we got. We got Batman sprung fully formed from the head of Zack Snyder without the backstory that gives it. And of course, like I said recently, I've seen a lot of articles lately which are titled Zack Snyder Explains. Zack Snyder explains this deleted scene, explains why this was there, explains why that was there. And if you have to explain it, Zack, it means you didn't put it in your film. If you didn't put it in the film, it's not part of the film. So don't tell me this was a great film because all these things were there in your mind. If you didn't tell it to us, it's not there, Zach. If you got to explain the joke, it wasn't funny. And if you got to tell me what it means that Jason Todd's Robin uniform is in the Batcave, that joke ain't funny, And that's the thing is they didn't give story, they didn't give character, they gave big set pieces, which is something Zack Snyder's great at. And they gave interesting characters that were performed well, but without a backstory to know why we're supposed to care that the Batman is violent, why we're supposed to care that Superman is conflicted, why we're supposed to care that Wonder Woman left the world of man. We get that I left the world of man. Okay, because, and we can infer and we can imagine, but as I said, they would have been much better doing Wonder Woman's story first as their own first Avenger line, their own first Avenger story, and then go into Batman. Really what they should have done is done Wonder Woman, done Batman, done Superman, and then bring them all together. Because that's how you build that kind of story. Or you do the flip side, which is that you start with the Justice League created, and then you explain how the world got to be that way, or you tear it down, and then you have to show it's rebuilding. So that's the thing is, if you want to jump ahead, you jump ahead with the Justice League fully formed, and then you destroy the Justice League when the big bad comes, and then you get the band back together as Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern, and the Flash, and Cyborg, and and everybody, because got to have Cyborg in there. Everybody gets together, and maybe we could even do John Stewart Green Lantern, because it doesn't have to be Hal Jordan. Although someone's saying that because there were jets in Batman v Superman, that was a Hal Jordan cameo. Sure, why not? Yeah, sure, I'll go along with you. Although I did hear there was a Colonel Ferris in there, and not that I think that the Ferrises were ever in the military, but the name Ferris was thrown out there, so there's that. Anyway, I've talked this entire Marvel podcast about DC. And we've gone on an hour, so we're going to cut it now. We've got too many connections to do, and I am going to write a blog about why Superman 3 is the best Superman film. I'm going to make my case, so look for that coming soon to the Superconnectivity blog. I'm going to try and write it this weekend, send it in to be considered by our master Robert Southgate.
Well, I was even going to say I have a DC blog, and Tyler and Lilith have been putting up guest posts. If you want to send it to me, I can put it up on there.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. That's fine, man. And I will make my case about why it is the best Superman film. I mean, like I said, like the limbo contest, I'm going to say the bar is kind of low. But I do think that Superman 3 carries with it that idea of a good character study, good characters. Mm-hmm. And the good characters, the character of Gus Gorman, the character of the billionaire supervillains, a new idea at the time, People forget how rare, how unheard of that was at the time, that, you would have the billionaire supervillains who weren't directly criminal, Mm-hmm. That was not a common thing, You could have, like, a rich guy like Wilson Fisk, but you couldn't have the idea that, I'm a billionaire industrialist and I'm going to just dabble in villainy, But that was a new idea that was there, that they eventually put into very much of the 80s, that eventually got into the Superman comic books with making Lex Luthor a millionaire, But anyway, I digress. Yes, but watch for that blog post. It's coming soon, I promise. Like all my other things, I promise I'm going to do. Phil, if they would like to say why did you talk about this guy or complain about, this is supposed to be a Marvel feed. Why am I listening to DC stuff? Where can they write you to complain about me, Phil?
If you want to know all about what it's like to work with the maestro of Marvel himself, Charlie Esser, you can email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I'm at nightwingpdp. You can usually find me live tweeting the DC shows Monday through Thursday. But the easiest way to find all my stuff is to go to my website, philparrish.wordpress.com.
Okay. And of course, if you would like to write to me in the emails, you can do so at but it's superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. If you'd like to tweet at me or tweet along with me as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Incredible Hulk from the late 70s and early 80s on MeTV, and set at 7 o'clock on Saturdays, or if you want to just tweet with me about anything, tweet me at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. And in the meantime, connect with us again next week, where we'll try not to go quite so long. Have a good night.